Welcome, everyone, to our interview with Mark Strickson.
And I haven't got a mask on.
I'm going to hand it over to our interviewer, Greg Bakun. Take it away.
Thank you very much. How's everyone doing tonight? All right. Are you ready to talk to Mr. Mark Strickson? All right. Hey there, Mark Strickson. How are you doing tonight?
Well, it's not tonight.
I know.
It's 2:00 in the afternoon for me the next day in New Zealand.
Right.
So it's 2:00 Saturday afternoon. You get used to it. And I've been Zooming about 4 times a day since COVID set in, with the UK mostly, but also the US. You get used to living on Zoom. It becomes a part of life.
No, it does. And so just so that we all have something to cry about, what is the temperature currently in New Zealand?
Oh, well, no, you don't have anything to cry about. You don't have anything to cry about where I am. New Zealand is a very long country. So it's longer than the UK, for example.
Sure.
I live right at the bottom of New Zealand in a town called Dunedin, which is the old name for Edinburgh in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Dunedin. And the Scottish got here and settled because there was lots of gold here. It was the richest town in the Southern Hemisphere at one point. But it's very cold. It's next stop Antarctica. This is where Scott and Shackleton got their last supplies before they went to Antarctica. So here today, at the height of summer, it's 14 degrees centigrade.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
In Auckland, it'll be 30.
Okay, geez. Yeah, and this morning we were, I think, 16 below Fahrenheit. So that you walk outside and you die immediately. So there is that. So I sent people out first before I left. And then so it warmed up to, I think, 1 degree. So we're really sitting pretty over here. Mark,
you're cold. Yeah, but I have to say, winter where I live is pretty cold as well.
Is it?
It's summer.
So first of all, it is really good to see you. Thank you so much for taking part in our fabulous convention. And I do want to remind all of our in-person attendees, as well as our fabulous attendees through YouTube. You may ask a question to Mark. For those who are in here with me right now, you can come up to the microphone, start a line or something. I'm going to talk to Mark a little bit. If you are on YouTube, please submit a question. Natasha is going to kind of let us know if there's a question or whatnot. So, Mark, I'm going to start with, what are you working on right now? And I'm not asking as Doctor Who. I'm just asking with all the stuff you have going on.
Okay, I made 17 hours of television last year, documentaries. So I make a series called Rich House, Poor House for Channel 5 in the UK. I'm still very much sort of UK based in terms of my production, even though I live in New Zealand. And Rich House, Poor House is a rich family swaps with a poor family. They live the life for a week. Mm-hmm. It shows on Channel 5 in the UK. It's primetime viewing. It's incredibly popular, and it's one of their flagship programs. I've just made a series for CBS Crime called Release to Kill, which was 10 episodes about people who were released from prison and then almost immediately killed again. They might have been put back in prison, and then they came out and did the same thing again. It was actually very interesting because we had expert panels with forensic psychiatrists and psychologists and whatever. So it wasn't in any way, it was actually, I thought, quite intellectual.
Yeah.
I wondered if anybody would watch it. It was incredibly popular. So that's good.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take? How long does it take to make something like that? Because that seems to have a lot of pieces to it. Is it a long production process?
To make about to start. No, it's not. These days we get about 3 weeks in the edit for every half an hour and 4 weeks for every hour.
Not long, yeah. Wow. Well, and
right. So we might start with 100 an hour.
Okay. Wow. And as you'll all see, we're going to have some delays
After
back and
you.
forth. Yeah, we're going to have some delays back and forth. Mark's a little far away, so I'm hoping that we're going to get you here closer eventually soon, because it'd be great to see you. I've been going to conventions for nearly 30 years now, so I've seen you so many times, and it's always been such a pleasure. I've never actually met you. Actually, I've always watched you from afar, and I know that sounds creepy, and it should. But it's been really fun to enjoy it. And one of the things I've been enjoying so much, and I can assume everybody else in here feels the same way, are the extras on the DVD releases and the Blu-ray releases. They are absolutely phenomenal. The question for you, Mark, is do you have, and I'm talking about like the stuff where the documentaries and they get you out on location stuff. Is there one or any in particular that really stand out to you as being like really fun and great memories? You don't say.
Yeah, the first made and wrote were the most snakes in the world. And they're all in Australia. And I did a zoology degree in Australia. I, with my team, discovered Steve Irwin. And it was memorable for many reasons. Steve had never made any television. I never directed a natural history film. We were flying on the seat of our pants, but the action that we got was absolutely incredible. And totally due to inexperience, I broke the mold for natural history programs. Nobody had ever taken the camera off the tripod before that point. I got back to the UK, where I was working at the time, and my presenter said, "This is incompetent. Have you never heard of a tripod?" Well, it was the first film with Steve for Discovery Channel. It was one of Discovery Channel's first films. I'd seen that the camera had come off the tripod a couple of years before in drama. And anyway, how else do you film snakes? You've got to get down and dirty with them. But yeah, it was a very risky film, but it became one of the most popular natural history films ever made. And that was the start of my career in that sort of programming. And I've never gone back. I've just continually made documentaries. And people say, "Do you want to go back to acting?" Well, I do the Big Finish things and things like that. Yeah. And I really enjoy acting. I would quite like to do some acting. But I mean, I've got 7 hours of documentary to make in the next 7 months. So long as they keep working me this hard, I'm not going to have a chance to go back to acting. And I have a 13-year-old son, so I need to keep the money coming.
One of the things that this convention has heralded is something called Who It Yourself. It's WHO, Who It Yourself. It's a sign of creativity. It's a way to get people to use their creativity. It's something that we all believe very strongly in. What does creativity mean to you, Mark? What does that mean when you think of creativity, and what inspires you?
Okay, I can tell you exactly what creativity means to me. It's a very easy question to answer. Creativity means a blank piece of paper, and you have to get a program out 3 or 4 weeks from there, and you have to start writing the script. Mm-hmm. It's no good mucking around for 24 hours. That's 24 hours lost. Yeah. You have to start writing and start working with your editor on it. So creativity means to me, it's something I enjoy, but it means a lot of very hard work. And we work to very, very fast schedules. So yeah, it means no mucking around. I mean, any writer will tell you, this is like, I'm in my study at home, right? My office, I've got an office in the garden, which is where you find me. What does a TV producer do most of the day? They write. Mm-hmm. That is what I do. I fill blank pieces of paper with script and make sure it works. So creativity means to me hard work. It gets exciting once you've broken the back of it. But for the first 2 weeks, say, of a 4-week edit, you should be having difficulty sleeping, because you should be so worried that you're not going to make the program on time that you can't sleep. And another really interesting thing about making television, and as I say, we might start off with 120 hours of footage and have to make 46 minutes in 4 weeks. Is that they've discovered that it's very much more difficult to get rid of visual images from our brain than it is words, thoughts, right? So what happens is you go to bed and you find all the pictures running through your brain, like your brain's trying to work them out. How are we going to piece this together? So you often wake up more tired than when you went to bed.
Well, and it kind of sounds like creativity and the word deadline are kind of synonymous together a little bit, because you have to reach that deadline, and I sort of work a little bit in your industry where you don't get any more time than the deadline. The deadline's it. There's no more room.
There is no more time.
Yeah.
That is it. We often have a broadcast date a week after 10 days after we deliver, right?
Yeah.
And that's very, very tight. I have put more people off working on television than anybody I know because I like to get students. I've done it in London. I do it out here. I get students from the university in to sit. I'm very happy for them to sit at the back of my edit room and see what we do because they are horrified by how fast we work.
I believe it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about a program you made some time ago called Doctor Who. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, here we are. When you played Turlo back in the 80s, I mean, and this is such a silly question. I don't know why I'm asking, but I feel like I have to. There's no way you would have thought the character or even the series or even the seasons you're in would have had such longevity as it has. I mean, we think obviously people are going to remember, but it seems like it's still fresh. Like it's still so popular with everybody.
Yeah, it sort of doesn't surprise me.
Well, that's good.
I think Doctor Who's always been a very strong program. I think it's one of the BBC's most successful franchises. And I know why, because the format works so well. It's like Steve Irwin, the format worked so well. You could keep making it for a very long time. And Doctor Who's the same. So am I surprised? I sort of am surprised. My 22-year-old, 23-year-old actor playing Turlo is sort of surprised. But with my producer head on, no, I'm not surprised to be here.
Yeah.
And I think when you look back on the older episodes, I think particularly in my episodes, the script writing was very strong.
Yep.
They're really interesting stories. So yeah, no, they still bear watching. I've shown my son a few episodes. I mean, I don't sit down I never talk about Doctor Who at home, obviously. And my son knows I was in Doctor Who, and he's 13. But a couple of years ago, we sat down and watched some episodes because he wanted to. And we didn't watch them together, actually. He said, can I have a DVD of some episodes of your Doctor Who's? I'd be interested to watch them. So he watched them, and he said, I was watching those Doctor Who's, and he said, you're actually quite good. And he said, and the stories are quite good too. I was surprised.
It's funny.
I mean, I don't act anymore, so presumably my son thinks I was such a shit actor that I had to give up acting. No idea. But it came as a big surprise to him. The Doctor Who's actually really interesting programming, and Dad's not a bad actor.
I think it's really interesting too. I was thinking about this the other day about the character of Turlo, that it really broke a mold having a character come in who wanted to kill the Doctor, who was working with the evil people, the villains, but yet you played it in a way that that I think everybody always rooted for Turlo regardless. There was never anyone being, oh gosh, he's bad, just like that. I mean, you always knew. You played it, obviously, as part of the character to be against his will, but you played it in a way that was so, that everyone just rooted, knowing that the Doctor would save you, the Doctor would help you.
Well, the Doctor always helps you, but I was very aware that I wanted from the start to make Turlo into a character that you didn't trust at first, but that you had sympathy for and that you liked. Because if the audience doesn't have sympathy for a character and doesn't get attached to that character, then it doesn't work. And I was very aware that, I was there as somebody that, young boys would, look at and, maybe, think of it as a role model and things like that. So I always wanted Turlo to be kind.
Yeah.
And I don't think Turlo was ever not kind. Even when he was being evil, he tried to be kind. And it may sound as if I had a lot of input into the character. Well, I only did in the sense that I met the script editor and script writers and that sort of thing, and they got to know me. But there was no rehearsal, for example, before my first scene on my first episode. There was no rehearsal at all. So I had to go into the first scenes, which were shot on film with the Brigadier's car and all those things in Mordred Undead, with no rehearsal at all. So I had to go into the first scene with a character. And I decided that character better be as much like me as possible, because that's the easiest character to keep going. And I have these rather clear blue eyes, which can look evil and sort of, So the eyes helped with looking evil. So I thought, well, I've got to work against that. And I've got to make him nice as well. And even by making him nice, that might make him even more untrustworthy. Perhaps he's just pretending to be nice.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But these are the decisions actors have to make.
Well, you have taught me now that for the rest of the convention, I'm going to be looking in everyone's eyes, and if they have blue eyes, they're evil. And I'm watching all of you, just so you know. So what was it like to join an established program like Doctor Who, the established cast and whatnot? You talk about your first day, no real rehearsal, but also not only that, but
no real rehearsal.
No rehearsal, yeah,
whatsoever.
I'm so sorry. You're right. No rehearsal whatsoever. What's it like to come on to an established show like that? Being a young actor, did it not even faze you at all, or did you just got on with it?
Well, I know I sound that I was young. I was 23, I think. I think I was 23. I mean, I've been on stage for over 2 years. I'd been a regular in a soap opera for the BBC called Angels, a hospital soap opera. And in those days, the BBC rehearsed all of its productions in a place, in a building in West London. And so I sort of just moved lunch tables. So I was used to making television. So that didn't freak me at all.
Yeah.
And I went to the Doctor Who studio to see one recording before I started. I was horrified about how fast they worked. It was being made on a fairly low budget at the time. And I don't think that shows to a large extent. And I think that's because the scripts were so good. But it was on 1 or 2 takes. And if there was 2 takes, then that was because something technically had gone wrong. It was not to do with the actors. The actors were just reliable every take.
Yeah.
And that's what you were paid to do. And that's almost why I got the job, because I'd been on this soap opera playing a ambulanceman from Birmingham with a broomy accent. People from Birmingham talk like that, and I come from near Birmingham, and I was an ambulanceman called Terry in this series Angels. And John Nathan Turner's boyfriend had been a production manager on Angels and worked with me, and he knew I turned up on time. I knew my lines. I could walk and talk without knocking the furniture over, and I was 100% reliable. And at the point that I joined Doctor Who, that was hugely important, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the only reason I got the part, but I think it certainly contributed to it that I was experienced and that they knew that I would be very reliable.
No.
So what was it like meeting all those, I mean, I'd seen them all in the BBC canteen. That was the Doctor Who table. I was on another table.
Sure.
You know, I sat next to Paul McCartney for lunch one day. You know, everybody just ate together in the BBC canteen. It was quite weird.
Because it's not like that anymore, is it? I mean, just I mean, and I'm not talking COVID or anything. It's just like the television center not existing anymore. That the way that television's made for the BBC, that doesn't exist anymore like that. A television factory.
It doesn't. It was a lovely, lovely club. I remember we were doing one episode, and sorry, I can't remember what the name of the episodes were, but Rula Lenska was in it. Actress called Rula Lenska.
Resurrection
and
of the
Top of
Daleks.
the Pops was going. Oh, right. Top of the Pops was being recorded in the studio next door. So Rula and I went next door and had a bit of a bop to Come a Chameleon, right? You know, the Boy George song. Come a Chameleon, right? And yeah, we just went next door and, you know, behind the cameras had a bit of a dance. It's nice.
That does sound nice. It's not, and it sounds very informal. It sounds a way to meet people. I mean, you just casually dropped that you sat next to Paul McCartney, and half the room is palpitating right now. I mean, we all love it. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, you never knew who you were going to meet. I remember it was really full, the canteen one day, and there's a very famous actor who you may have heard of in America, but called Ronnie Barker.
Oh, yeah.
The two Ronnies, and, you know, but he did things like Porridge, but he's a really, really famous British actor.
Yep.
And he was like a real star for you know, and he was sitting on his own at a table. And I said, excuse me, Mr. Barker, can I sit down? Can I sit down with you? And he said, yes, of course you can. He said, I sometimes think I smell. But, you know, you're just a normal person if you're an actor. And it was very nice in those days. It was just one big club, you know.
That sounds really cool. So with all that, is there anything? I guess you know, Turlough had a pretty good wrap up of his character in Planet of Fire. Would you have preferred to see something different with his character, or some area that you think that the character could be explored further with?
I was very happy with my wrap up. I mean, the obvious question is, did I choose to leave Doctor Who, or did they get rid of me? I chose to leave Doctor Who. Chose to leave. I thought Turlough had his dash. And I think that my last episodes were really well written. Mm-hmm. I was very well written for across my story arc. And that's quite rare for a Doctor Who assistant to have a story arc, you know? So I was brought into Doctor Who to be another character that could have a separate story arc. And make it more textured. I could go off on my own. You know, I always say I had a brain. You know, mm-hmm. And it worked for me. And I don't think it would have worked to have kept Turlough going much longer, because it would have relied upon Turlough being stupid. And he wasn't stupid.
Nope.
You always felt that he knew what was going on. You know, and he had another agenda. He wasn't going to be there for a long time. No, I was there for 2 years.
Yeah,
but you know, he wasn't going to just potter on. He had his own life to get on with, and I think that works. Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting if they brought Turlough back.
Well, see, that's what I was thinking of, and I was talking to some friends about it too. It's like let's go visit, you know, have the Doctor visit, you know, Tryon. Let's see what Turlough's up to. I mean, that would be amazing. Yeah. What do you all think? I mean, should we do that? Should we get that going? We have no power to do that. You do know that, right? Okay, just want to make sure. So, and I do want to remind all of our audiences, both online and in person, if you have a question for Mark, you'll feel free to come up to the microphone, or you're going to hear me talk that much longer. So just remember that. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it would be really interesting to see what happened. And I'm going to be super transparent, folks. I haven't listened to all the Big Finish stuff. There's 5,000 pieces to it, so I haven't listened to everything. So I'm assuming, Mark, that there hasn't been really all your Turlo stories have taken place while you were with the doctor, right? There hasn't been anything after the fact that you had left and he checked in with you or anything, right?
No, I think they haven't all been with the doctor. I've had them on my own.
That's right. That's right.
There have been some stories. Now, don't put me on the spot, right?
Right.
Because
I mean, you were there, but I'm okay, sure.
I have trouble remembering things. I mean, it's particularly hard. It's particularly hard for me because of work and now because of COVID. But before that, whenever I went to the UK, and I was spending 4 or 5 months in the UK for the previous 3 or 4 years before COVID. Then I told them when I was going to be there, and I told them my availability dates, and they organised it around me, which was absolutely fantastic.
That's really nice.
But since COVID, I mean, we've recorded 5, which will come out in the next 2 years. And when I started recording them on my own in New Zealand, they said, would you like to employ some New Zealand actors to play the Doctor, to play Tegan, to play whatever, play all the, so that you get a rhythm.
Sure.
And I tried this for half a day. They were employed for a day, 5 of them. And it just was a disaster because I can hear Peter's voice in my head. I can hear Janet, Sarah's, Matthew's voice in my head. I can hear the Daleks in my head if I want to. And it was just way too distracting to hear other voices doing those parts. So you get this really strange thing when I do a Big Finish recording from New Zealand. I stand in front of a microphone, I do my line, then in my head, I go through the lines and make it happen. And so there's a big pause, and then I do another line. And they have to work with that. And I usually do them 1 or 2 takes if I think I need it on a line. I might do more. And I do lots of screaming and heavy breathing and what's called wild tracks in the business. Bit of running and panting, and I do all that. And it's been working very well. I can't tell that I'm doing it on my own. The only thing is, one of the reasons that I liked doing Big Finish things was I met my mates. And it's been a few years since I've met my mates.
Oh. Hopefully that's going to rectify soon, hopefully, or eventually.
By August this year, I think you'll be able to get back into New Zealand.
Okay.
At the moment, you can go out, but you can't get back in.
We have people took me seriously. They do not want to hear my voice, so we have a line of people who would like to ask Mr. Strickson a question. Yes, sir. What do you got for us?
My question would be going back to the 5 doctors. Did you have much interaction with all of the prior doctors behind the scenes? And do you have any other fond memories from that particular episode?
I have many fond memories. I always got on very well with Patrick Troughton. He was a terribly nice man. He was off bird spotting, and I do mean the feathered variety. He'd go off and go bird spotting when we were filming, and then he'd be there back at the hotel when we came back. But I'd met Pat on, he and I went to America together, both of us, for the very first time. He'd never been to America, and neither had I. And we met to get on a flight to Chicago. And we got off in Chicago, got into a stretch limo, which was not what UK actors are used to. And we drove into Chicago, and we looked at all the wonderful, it was nighttime, the skyscrapers. And Pat got a little flask of whiskey out of his pocket and said, "Mark, I think we're both going to need a bit of this. Help yourself." And that was real Pat. And so I had lovely sort of conversations with Pat and, dinner and things like that. But yes, we were all up there doing it. And it was absolutely lovely. I mean, I got to know all of them very well. And you have as well, you see, through in years coming by, you've seen it in conventions as well. You know, you just meet the same people all the time. And it really is a quite a close-knit family, the Doctor Who family. My fondest memory of Five Doctors is a complete cock-up. So when you film on film, film's a really simple thing, which is why we still use film in natural history if we're going to a very remote location, because it's basically just a clockwork mechanism. It's easy to repair a film camera. It's like old cars. You knew where everything was. Now you can't see where the hell anything is, right? And you've got to have bought the BMW tools to work on your engine or whatever engine you're working on. But a film camera is a very, very simple thing. And basically, the film goes through a space in the camera where it's exposed and it captures the image. And that's called the gate. And so when you finish filming, they say, the production manager says, just checking for a hair in the gate. And that means any obstruction in the gate. So that would be on the final film. So they always do that. So anyway, I finished work on the Five Doctors and set off in my old VW Beetle. And my wife at the time, Julie, and I went bed and breakfasting around Wales and had a lovely 5 days. And I got heading down to London again. I got to Stratford-upon Avon where my great aunt Violet lived. And I went to see my great aunt Violet, and she said, oh my goodness, the BBC have been trying to contact you. It's even been on local radio. It's been on the radio all the time. Would you contact the BBC? So I contacted the BBC, and there had been a hair in the gate. And I had to go back to Wales, and we had to re-record the scenes, a couple of the scenes on the top of the hill there, where I was drawing the picture. But yeah, I mean, these days, that sort of tells you the technology at the time. There were no mobile phones in those days. So you couldn't contact me by mobile phone. The radio wasn't working in the car. So I wasn't listening to the radio. So they just couldn't contact me. Life was bliss then. People, you could go to places where people couldn't contact you. It was absolutely wonderful.
That is great. That is great.
Thank you very much.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
We got a doppelganger who would like to ask you a question.
My question is actually related to one of your non-Doctor Who roles.
Right.
One of my favorite roles you also did was young Scrooge in 1984's A Christmas Carol. Do you have any memorable stories of that production?
I have one very memorable story, which is that I got the script through. Well, funny enough, memorable that I got the part. I mean, there were very, very few films being made in those days in the UK. To be in a film was something very special. And Matthew Waterhouse, I remember, he wrote a book, I think, called The Boy in the Blue Box. But he asked me if he could tell the story. And it was that we met each other at a convention or something, and I'd said I was up for this part in A Christmas Carol with George C. Scott. And I said, I won't get it. You never get these parts. and he said, the funny thing is, Mark did get the part. And the next amazing thing was I got the script, and where they were filming it, my dad worked for the National Trust at the time. He was managing properties for the National Trust, which looks after historical properties in the UK. And he was managing a big property called Attingham Park outside Shrewsbury on the Welsh borders in the UK. And that's where we were going to film. So I was able to stay with my parents, walk out and out onto the film set. And my dad had only taken the job about 3 weeks before we were doing the film. So that was extraordinary. It was really nice for my mum and dad in a sense, you know? Mm-hmm. To see because what do people do as an actor? You know, I mean, tell your parents you're an actor. What's an actor do? They learn lines, and they walk about spouting them off. But it's quite nice to see the process as well. you know.
So they were on
and
set. They were on set watching at least sometimes the filming
Well, my dad had to be because it
because
was
of his
in the ground of the
role.
house that he was
Yeah,
managing.
Got it.
Yeah.
It takes me a while.
So, yeah, no. So I mean, it was lovely, and I have to say, I do think it's a lovely film. My mother watches it every Christmas. Every Christmas Day, my mother watches it. It's a sort of, religious rite in the Strickson family. But it is a lovely film, and if I had to say what my favorite piece of work is, then it would be that. It's films are, it's my technical head on. Film's a lovely thing. It softens everything. And you can try and impersonate film with digital. It doesn't quite get there. It's getting better and better and better. When you set a digital camera, you have to know what film stock the number is with Kodak, and you can digitally set it to replicate that film stock. So that's how much we still rely on film.
That's cool. Thank you, Matt. And then we have
pleasure.
another Matt that wants to ask a question.
Hi, this question may be a little esoteric, but way back in 1986, you wrote the foreword to a novel that continued Turlough's adventures called The Earthlink Dilemma. And I'm wondering if you can exclusively reveal, some 36 years later, whether you actually read the book.
I can exclusively reveal that I did read the book. And I can tell you, I can tell you how I know I read the book, because Tony Attwood, the author, come on, be impressed.
Yep.
Tony Attwood, the author's description of Turlough is exactly what I was wearing when I first met Tony to discuss the book with him. I think it's green jeans and a t-shirt or something, right? I was definitely wearing green jeans, right? Light green jeans. His description of Turlough is his description of me when he met me. And that goes back to, you see, one of the joys of, or not one of the joys of being an actor, when you play a part that you can bring a lot of yourself to, acting becomes very easy. When you play a part that you have to act, it becomes a lot more difficult. I didn't feel I had to act too much to be Turlough. I didn't feel I had to act too much to be the young Scrooge. But for example, in the soap opera where I was playing an ambulanceman with a Birmingham accent, I had to do lots of acting. That wasn't me. And I've played, policemen in the north of England. I've done all sorts of things, right? So the closer a part is to you, then the easier it is. So I did actually have quite a lot of input into that with Tony, and he'd ring me up and ask my advice about things. And often that was also the case with the Doctor Who scripts. Both Janet and I were very keen on, she'd say, oh, Tegan wouldn't say that. And I'd say, well, Turlough wouldn't say that. He'd say this. And so we were able to alter a line to make it better for our character. We weren't stuck on just learning the words.
Do you have that with the Big Finish work also? Like, especially when you were all together, like be able to kind of have a discussion amongst yourselves and not necessarily rewrite the script, but make it feel more in line with your characters?
Yeah, very much so. Because amazingly, it's incredibly easy for me to drop back into being Turlough, as I think it is for Sarah to be Nyssa or Matthew, Janet to be Tegan. We just drop back into it, right? And if a line doesn't work for us, we'll just say, look, this line, obviously you look at the script before, and I'll sit in bed, wading through the script, and I'll rewrite it slightly because it just doesn't fit how I would have said that as Turlough. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you have much more experience of your character than the scriptwriter does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you're doing that, do you record outlines? Like maybe you have a set of lines in the script, but then you might try other lines and see if those work in edit or something?
Yeah, I absolutely do that, and I Well, you would do it if you were in the studio with everybody in the UK.
Yeah.
But I have to make those decisions on my own in New Zealand. And so I'm super careful. And I often record 3 or 4 different versions of, not often, but if I think a line's problematical, I'll give them 3 or 4 different versions.
Sure.
And I give them different sorts of reads on the line.
Right.
One of the things to judge, of course, with radio, or is what's going on in the background. So I have to read the background script very carefully. Am I shouting? What's going on? So is there sound in the background that's gradually becoming louder? You have to mark all that up on your script.
Right.
And because I'm a producer, I think I'm very good at it. I mean, that's not me slapping myself on the back. That's my bloody job. I'm not good at it. Give it up. But because of that, I'm very, very detailed in how I look at the script and the reads that I give them back in the UK. And I think that's why it works. And I'm not sure that every actor could do what I do.
No, and I do have another question, but I'm going to ask one more question before we get to him. That when you're doing those lines and you send them off to Big Finish, do they ever come back to you and be like, you know what, we think the emphasis has changed. We want to have you reread them this way, or we want.
They never have done so far. But I always say to them, I always write an email after it when we send the files off. I say, if there's anything you need, all I've got to do, because I've got facilities where I live, so I can just walk back in the studio and give you another read. It's not a problem. But sometimes it's something like a name, right?
Yeah.
Something like here's a simple example. Is everybody calling this character Natasha or Natasha?
Yep.
Now, usually I'll have had time to read the script and I'll have been able to ask them that and get a pronunciation off them, right?
Yep.
But if I haven't, I'll do the line again. So I'll say, I'll say Natasha and then I'll say Natasha, right? So that they've got both options.
It's so fascinating what you do, what other people do to make these audio dramas, because you are, with how the world is, where you're living, everything, it's a puzzle that everyone puts together, and us, the listeners, are basically unaware unless we talk to about it, and that's the job, right? That's the point. We have a.
So I'm back.
I was like, are you show and tell, or what's happening here? It's like you're going rogue on me.
So to go back to one of your earlier questions, I was just turning the fire down. It's not warm enough here not to have a fire on, right? So I've got an electric heater in the study, which I just turned down. That's where I was off to. But you don't have to be jealous of the weather in Dunedin.
Anything that's warmer than 10 below, we're jealous of. We're going to go to the audience, and we have a question.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Hi.
You mentioned deadlines as a producer and also some deadlines that you had as an actor in Doctor Who. Were there any episodes where you thought, I don't know if we're going to make this deadline, or do you have any stories about just barely making it?
Well, yes, there are. Yeah, we didn't make the deadline. It was in... Oh gosh, what about Knights in Armour, Bodiam Castle?
King's Demon?
King's Demons, yeah. King's Demons was a massive, I'm pretty sure it was King's Demons. Yeah, I think it was. So we were in the biggest studio in the BBC, Television Centre 1, right? And I'm pretty sure it was King's Demons. But why I think it was King's Demons is because that was one huge set. We did a lot on, right?
Yeah.
And then the next day we had lots of little sets. And so they worked all night to take out one lot of sets and put in the next lot. And we quite simply ran out of time. And that was when I was in Doctor Who, that was a financial disaster. Now, you couldn't work late, because I'm sure people have heard this story, but it is absolutely true. At 10 o'clock at night, they pulled a big lever, and all the lights went out in the studio. And there were little guide lights to get you out of the studio. But at 10 o'clock at night, there was no leeway. That lever went down. And it was all over. And we hadn't finished the episodes. So this was an absolute disaster, because this meant that on the next studio shoot, you had to start again on King's Demons, and you lost a day. Now, a whole day of crew, actors, talent, all the sets being brought in, that was a massive overspend. And so, yeah, it was fairly petrifying. And in my last episode, Planet of Fire, we were running out of time in the studio, and it was the scene where I talk to my planet, and I'm on this button thing, right? And in the wreck of the spaceship, right? And Fiona Cummings, the producer director, who was wonderful, it wasn't her fault we were running behind time. We were doing our very best to do it, but she said, "We've got 3 minutes, Mark. You've just got to get it in for me. This is it. We have 3 minutes till the lights go out. Off you go." And I actually cut the scene in my head.
On the fly.
And did it shortly. Yeah.
Amazing. But
So it was pretty frightening.
because that's a lot of pressure on an actor, especially if sometimes it's coming down to the practical effects, kind of holding things up, stopping things, but at the end of the day, you have to kind of make up that missed time.
Well, that's what I always say. The actors had to be super reliable, right? I mean, there were a lot of effects in Doctor Who, and frequently they went wrong, and that might take 10 minutes again to set up, to do the scene again. But so therefore, as an actor, you could not get it wrong. There was never a chance to say, "Can I do that again?"
Mm-hmm.
That was just not part of your vocabulary. You just had to get it right. And often you would have liked to have done it again, and it wasn't the best performance in the world. But that was not part of being in Doctor Who at that time. You know?
And it probably didn't help that your last story, when you're talking in studio stuff, that you had Chameleon, which never worked anyway.
Well, Chameleon never worked. No, but Chameleon was a really good idea,
Right.
which there wasn't the technology for at the time. So I would always say about John Nathan Turner, the producer, and Eric Saywood, the script editor, I totally sympathize with them trying to get a robotic character in, right? But it should have been like Red Dwarf.
Yeah, right.
The robotic character should have been a human, pretending to be a robotic character. But they went to the technology guys who built Chameleon, and they said, "Oh no, we can build you a walking, talking robot." Well, very few people in the world still, including Sony, have actually managed to build a walking, talking robot.
No.
We're talking 30 years ago.
Yep.
The technology wasn't there. So yes, Chameleon was usually in pieces on the floor when you went to a Chameleon scene, and impossible to act with, because all the lines were pre-recorded for Chameleon. So Chameleon said his line, you said your line, then there might be a yawning gap before Chameleon said his next line. And then you might have a long line, and then Chameleon's butting in on you. No, it was a soddy nightmare, basically.
I was just going to say, and I brought this up earlier, but we kind of had technical difficulties. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Blu-ray extras, the DVD extras and stuff, and it's been really fun to see some of these retrospectives that you've taken part in, along with Peter and Janet and Matthew and Sarah. It's just, I mean, it's not work, is it? I mean, I'm sure it is work. I don't want to diminish it.
No, it isn't. It is work, but it's only partly work.
Yeah.
To give you an example of that, right? We're due to do another one going to Amsterdam, right? Well, what was the story that Peter and Janet and
Arc
filmed
of Infinity.
Arc of Infinity. Yeah. Don't worry, I'll watch it before I do this job.
See, I'm not just a pretty face. I know these things too. You know,
Anyway, so yes, so one of them said to the producer from the BBC, "Can't Mark come to Amsterdam with us?"
That's great.
And so they've agreed. I can go to Amsterdam. So long as I look useful and ask them some intelligent questions, you know. So you're absolutely right. It's partly work, but we do love seeing each other and getting together. You know, we're very good friends, and that was a thing about when I was in Doctor Who, that I was surrounded by lovely people. Yeah, people say, "Did you enjoy doing Doctor Who?" And I always say, well, you know, some of the bits about the work, you know, it was very long hours and it was pretty stressful at times. But if you go into work and there are nice people there every day, then that makes work much easier. And it makes the workplace a nice place to go to. And I work with lovely people. So,
they are lovely people. I think many of us have met them over the years and think, you know, they're amazing. You know, I was just curious with your production background, I mean, your men's production background, and I know these are on a much smaller scale. Have you ever thought that maybe there's something I'd like to produce for the Blu-ray range, you know, as a documentary or something? A subject?
Yes, I have. And we're in the progress, but the problem is I'm too ruddy busy. I've promised the powers that be at the BBC that I will try and get around to this by about August this year. But when I first did my zoology degree in Australia, my Dean of Science was called Rod Simpson. And I was doing a zoology practical class one afternoon, and Rod was touring the laboratories, checking everything was going well, and he was lurking behind me. And he came up to me and he said, "I know this is probably a stupid question. You weren't in Doctor Who, were you?" And because I've got my white lab coat on, I'm just another student. And I said, yes, I was, Rod, yes. I didn't. I said, yes, I was Professor Simpson. Not Rod. He said, "Oh, it's really interesting." He said, "Because I watched," he said, "the reason I love," and he said, "I love Doctor Who, I'll confess." He said, "The reason I love watching Doctor Who is because I am convinced that all the monsters, all the aliens are based around real animals, and they take everything from nature." And I said, "Well, I think you're very right. I think you're very correct in that, right? I'm sure there's a lot of an element to that." So I've got this ongoing idea, right, called Who Zoo, which just goes back to famous aliens and monsters in Doctor Who, and it tells you how they were designed and where the ideas came from in nature. Involves probably me walking around a zoo and showing things, and a few other actors as well, and a few other scientists. But they would really like that at BBC Enterprises. So I think it will happen. It's really just a problem that I have so much television to make. But it's something I'd really enjoy, I have to say.
I mean,
Brian Cox made The Science of Doctor Who.
That's
If you
right.
haven't seen it, watch it. It's really good.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, would this be a one-off or an ongoing series? Do you
It'd be a one-off.
Just
It'd
one-off.
be a one-off. Yeah.
That would be pretty amazing. We have about 5 minutes left. If anyone had one more question for Mark, otherwise we'll just keep this going. I mean, it's really exciting. And do you think this year? I mean, do you think this year you're going to be able to you're all going to get to Amsterdam and make this thing? Because to be honest, you're holding up season 20 for us on Blu-ray. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. We'd really like it. So help us out here.
Yeah.
Okay?
So I've said, and I wrote an email 2 days ago to this effect, that I think I can be in the UK in August, September. And if they send me some dates through, I'll try and work around those dates. What I can't risk is leaving. At the moment, if I left New Zealand, I couldn't get back in.
Right.
And that's been that since I got back here from London a year ago last March. And they were due to bring the borders down end of January. Well, I think it's going to be the end of April. and now I'm busy again until the end of July, in middle of July, producing television. And so I've given them my dates, and I said, look, if you give me some dates in August, September, I will work around that. Apart from anything else, my parents are elderly, live in the UK. I really need to see my parents.
Right.
So, you know, I want to go back, but I can't risk going back and not being able to get back to New Zealand.
I mean, that's a scary thought, isn't it? I mean, yeah, no, I don't blame you. I suppose we can
I
wait
think there
on
are
season.
125,000 New Zealanders stuck abroad at the moment. Can't
Is
go back.
there that many?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we could wait on season 20 a little bit longer. I mean, you've made your case. We get it. So, just wrapping up here is, I don't know. I mean, we covered it very well, I think. Is there anything else exciting Doctor Who project-wise that you are working on that you could let us know about?
Yeah, well, there are 5 big finished projects which I've recorded, right?
Yeah.
So they'll be gradually coming out, right? And I don't want to go on my emails while I'm on Zoom. Hold on. Have I printed it out? No, I haven't. Oh, yes, here you go. Look.
Paper.
So this was from BBC Enterprises. So if I come over in August, right, there's an In Conversation with Matthew Sweet.
Oh.
A Behind the Sofa for season 20 with Peter, Janet, and Sarah. Ark of Infinity in Amsterdam, possible other filming. And then they bang on about wanting the Doctor Who zoo. Anyway, so there you go.
That's pretty exciting. That is really cool. We're all super excited about that. I mean, they're not clapping or anything, but I know they're all excited about it. You know, they're cold. Some of them are frozen. I can't get them to do stuff. It's just amazing. I think we're at a good stopping point. Mark, I just cannot thank you enough for this really exciting, fun conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Well, likewise, and you can go to bed tonight comfortable knowing that I live at next stop Antarctica, and the weather's shit where I live most of the time.
All right, Mark Strickson, thank you very much. It's fantastic. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.